When people think of Richard Gere, they remember the deep gaze in Pretty Woman or the rugged charm of a Hollywood icon from the 90s. However, in his later years, he didn't leave behind a super yacht or an empire in the film industry. Instead, he left behind a legacy that moves his fans to tears. Join us as we embark on the final journey of Richard Gere, the man who chose to disappear from the noisy world in order to truly be present with what matters most: love, family, and mindfulness. Richard Gere has surely left a lasting impression on us not only through his films, but also through the way he chose to live a peaceful, meaningful life. What do you think about his final journey? A person who chose mindfulness, family, and love over fame and wealth. If you agree, leave a 1. If not, comment a 0. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the choice to live mindfully in a world that moves so fast. Enjoy the video, and don't forget to hit subscribe to support the channel and never miss such heartwarming stories. It's not the number in the bank. It's a simple life, a peaceful soul, and values that make the whole world pause. Yes, I love my wife. She's amazing, a model mother, healthy, happy children, and to me, nothing matters more than that. Beneath the image of the once Hollywood sex symbol, Richard Gere today is a family man. No noise, no boasting, just dedication and simplicity in love. There was a time when he embodied every desire on the silver screen. Richard Gere was once the dream of Hollywood, handsome, mysterious, seductive, and full of challenges. He didn't need to try, just a smile was enough to earn millions. In Pretty Woman, he made the whole world melt. With American Gigolo, he shocked the film industry by fully embodying a bold role, a high-end escort with a cold exterior but undeniable charm. For over 2 decades, he wasn't just an actor. He was the epitome of masculinity, the standard of attraction and fame. But then he disappeared. No scandals, no controversies, no retirement announcements. One day, people suddenly realized Richard Gere was no longer there. He withdrew from Hollywood, withdrew from the United States. And what shocked the public even more wasn't just his departure, but rather, what did he leave behind? For many years, he owned an entire real estate empire. From vast estates in the suburbs of New York, a luxurious villa in Connecticut, to a high-end apartment in the heart of Manhattan. With his own forest, a winery, stables, a guest house, and a man-made stone stream, he lived like a modern-day aristocrat in the heart of America. But then he sold it all without any warning, without any clear reason. He gave up the United States, the place where he was born, the place that once gave him fame, wealth, and glory. A person who once owned a fortune of over 120 million USD has let go of everything. No super yacht, no company, no move to California. He no longer exists on the showbiz map. No one knows where he is, why he left, or what secret he is keeping. What could make a superstar turn his back on all the fame, wealth, and Hollywood? What is he holding on to that no one could have imagined? Why did that thing lead him to choose a life so different from what we expect of a big star? To understand Richard Gere's unusual choice, we must return to the beginning. Where it all began, and perhaps where he truly found himself. It wasn't Los Angeles, nor the glamorous New York, but a small town near Syracuse, New York, that nurtured Richard Gere's soul. Born on August 31st, 1949, he grew up in a family that wasn't wealthy or artistic. His father was an insurance salesman, and his mother was a homemaker. Yet that humble home was filled with music, discipline, and humanistic values elements that quietly shaped who he became. Even as a child, Richard was an introverted, quiet kid, always feeling like he didn't belong in the crowd. He didn't start out as an actor. In high school, he played the trumpet, practiced diligently, and was particularly outstanding in gymnastics. In 1967, Richard received a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, majoring in the contradictory fields of philosophy and theater, a clear early sign that he wasn't going to follow the conventional path. After 2 years of college, Richard decided to drop out, not because he was discouraged, but because he realized he didn't need a degree to become himself. He left the classroom and entered the small stages of Seattle and New York, taking on minor nameless roles, getting by day with the quiet belief that one day even silence would be heard. The first turning point came in 1975, when Richard took on the role of a death row inmate in Head of the Killer. It was a unique role. He was blindfolded, with no expression except for his voice. But it was this very limitation that highlighted his greatest strength, his profound inner presence. It wasn't about the gaze nor the outward appearance, but the energy radiating from within. After that role, Richard continued to appear in Looking for Mr. Goodbar, Days of Heaven, Yanks. But the golden opportunity truly came when John Travolta turned down a bold role, and that role fell into Richard Gere's hands. It was 1980, and the film was American Gigolo. From the very first moment he appeared on screen, bare and unashamed, embodying a high-end escort, Richard was no longer just a promising actor. He had become an icon of understated sensuality, of hidden intensity, of the modern man who didn't need to shout to make the world turn its head. He redefined allure through silence. American Gigolo didn't just turn Richard Gere into a global sex symbol. This was the beginning of a series of years where anything Richard touched became a cultural phenomenon. 2 years later, he exploded again with An Officer and a Gentleman, a film that seemed simple but became a global sensation, grossing nearly $130 million USD and earning multiple Oscar nominations. Richard Gere officially became an essential name in Hollywood during the 1980s. However, Gere didn't choose the predictable path. Instead of repeatedly playing the ideal gentleman role, he took on more challenging characters. Bent, a stage play about the gay victims in Nazi concentration camps, was a bold choice. The role earned him a prestigious international stage award, but more importantly, it proved one thing. Richard Gere didn't act to be liked, he acted to explore humanity. From then on, Richard pursued more complex roles, where morality and the self were always in a state of tension. In 1990, he shocked audiences with the role of a corrupt cop in Internal Affairs. Then, in Primal Fear, 1996, he portrayed a lawyer facing off against a cunning teenage criminal. This role helped catapult Edward Norton into the spotlight. In The Jackal, 1997, Gere transformed once again into an IRA veteran, complete with an Irish accent, locking horns with Bruce Willis. However, if there's one cinematic moment that has etched Richard Gere into the public's memory, it would be Pretty Woman, 1990. Ironically, he initially turned down the script, believing it was too cheesy and risky. But when he met Julia Roberts, the strange chemistry between them made him change his mind. The film made history. $463 million USD in global box office revenue with just a $14 million USD budget. A pop culture icon was born, and Gere officially became Hollywood's eternal gentleman. The 1990s saw Richard Gere continuously succeeding with roles that balanced commercial appeal and profound depth. Summersby, Runaway Bride, First Night, Red Corner, each of these films helped solidify his place in the hearts of audiences. His earnings also increased steadily, from $2 million USD to $5 million USD, then hitting $13 million USD per film, a staggering amount at the time. The peak of his artistic career came in the early 2000s, when Gere took on the role of lawyer Billy Flynn in the dark musical Chicago. This role earned him a Golden Globe, but more importantly, it confirmed that Gere was no longer a star just because of his looks. He had become a true artist with skill, depth, and craftsmanship honed over decades in the industry. To date, he has appeared in over 50 films, with dozens of unforgettable roles and hundreds of millions in box office earnings. The strangest thing about Richard Gere's career isn't the roles he chose, but something he never had: an Oscar nomination. From Days of Heaven to The Benefactor, where he portrayed a businessman spiraling downward both morally and financially, Gere repeatedly reached deep emotional layers. But not once did the Academy acknowledge him. Perhaps it was this indifference that led him to step away from the game, because his career didn't need a golden statue to be validated. It was complete enough for him to walk away with his head held high. At the peak of his fame, Gere earned millions of dollars per film. His net worth once reached as high as $120 million USD. But unlike his contemporaries who spent money on yachts, jets, or mansions in Beverly Hills, Richard chose a different path. In New York State, he bought an old inn and transformed it into the Bedford Post Inn, a luxurious 8-room hotel nestled in nature. No EDM, no bar, no VIP rooms, just yoga, meditation, organic meals, and mindful breathing. It wasn't a business venture. It was a life statement. In Tuscany, Italy, a place where he once spent entire afternoons strolling just to listen to the wind and the clinking of wine glasses, Gere partnered with Tenuta San Filippo to create Brunello di Montalcino, one of Italy's finest wines. Under the Bedford Post label, the wine has a bold, astringent taste with a sweet aftertaste and a hint of loneliness. "I can't imagine a meal without wine," he once said, not because of addiction, but because he sees wine as the rhythm of life, slow, deep, and emotionally rich. At 70, Richard Gere no longer chases time. Every morning he meditates, takes walks in the garden, plays with his young children, and engages with his wife in activities for the environment, education, and humanitarian causes. His schedule isn't rigid, but there's still order. He's not busy, but always fulfilled. And what's truly astonishing is that he chose to live this way while still at the peak of his career, fully capable of making 10 more films if he wanted. He doesn't live loudly, but it's precisely this silence that makes the world stop and see him differently. A man who refused to become a product of Hollywood to live as a true human being. Because when someone chooses a simple life amidst millions of dollars, it's certainly not because they lack anything, but because they have enough. For over 3 decades, he has owned a real estate portfolio that would make any A-list star envious. But the properties he bought, lived in, and then left all share one thing in common. They weren't just shelters. They were reflections of his philosophy of life. In 1987, when his career was soaring, Gere bought his first property in Pound Ridge, New York, for $1.5 million USD. It marked the beginning of his journey to live slowly, deeply, and authentically. Instead of choosing the grandeur of Beverly Hills or the sunny shores of Malibu, Richard Gere chose to live just an hour's drive from Manhattan in a secluded, quiet, and entirely private area. For many years, he quietly expanded the land, buying adjacent lots, building 5 guest houses, and renovating the main house, which spans over 1,000 square meters, complete with 9 fireplaces, stables, a pond, and even private horseback riding trails. The 50-acre estate resembles a personal nature reserve where he has hidden away for over 30 years, far from Hollywood, away from the cameras, and distant from the spotlight that he once stood at the center of. In 2022, he decided to sell the estate. The price? $28 million, a large sum. But what shocked the public was not the selling price, but the way he left. No announcement, no images, no farewell words. Only a real estate listing appeared, and the transaction was completed in silence. Just a few months later, he purchased a historic property in New Canaan, Connecticut, once owned by 2 musical icons, Paul Simon and Edie Brickell. The 31-acre property includes a classic 11-room mansion, a 3-bedroom guest house, ancient forests, stone streams, an outdoor pool, and even a waterfall, a fish pond, and trails through nature. An English-style beauty in the heart of America. But Gere didn't simply settle there. He had a vision. Richard submitted a plan to the Canaan Planning Commission to turn 27 acres into an ecological farm, growing mushrooms, keeping bees, possibly raising dairy goats, a self-sustaining place where his children would grow up surrounded by land, nature, mindfulness, and roots. A humane, profound vision that clearly reflects his life philosophy. In 2024, just 2 years later, he sold everything. The selling price, $10.75 million, almost breaking even. The farm project was canceled. The property was swiftly listed for sale, with the transaction conducted quietly. No one understands the reason. No failure, no controversy, no explanation. Just one fact. He left the United States, not to London nor Provence. Richard Gere chose Spain, specifically the quiet suburbs north of Madrid in Alcobendas. There, he purchased a villa worth 11 million euros with a wine cellar, a large garden, a stable, and a 34-acre plot of land, spacious enough for his 2 young sons to play all afternoon without ever touching the fences. No fountains, no sports cars, no 24/7 security systems. Only the wind, the Spanish language, the trees, and his wife's family nearby. A simple choice, but profound. My wife gave me 6 years to live in my own world, Gere shared with Vanity Fair Spain. Now I think it's time to live in her world. And so, at the age of 70, Richard Gere disappeared from the country that took him to the top to start over in a place where no one recognized him, in a house where no one could take photos, living a life with no schedule. Even though he left the United States, Richard Gere didn't completely sever ties with the land that had brought him to greatness. He still holds on to a few places as an invisible thread connecting him to the past. One of them is an apartment in Gramercy Park, New York, which he bought in 2016 for over $2 million based on advice from his close friend, Jimmy Fallon. Then there is the house in Southampton, which was originally purchased for $6.5 million and later sold for an astonishing $36 million. Another older apartment where he lived for 2 decades is now being rented out for $20,000 a month. These places are like silent, commodified slices of memory, not flaunted or made public. He has never officially renounced the U.S. He simply chose not to carry it with him on his new journey. For Richard, living spaces are just the surface layer. What truly reflects his character lies in what he keeps, drives, and the choices he gives up, all of which mirror a profound life philosophy. In his garage, there are no signs of million-dollar supercars or flashy modified vehicles. Instead, there are classic, iconic cars. He once owned a Jaguar E-Type, a model that Enzo Ferrari famously called the most beautiful car ever made. Alongside it, there was a Mercedes-Benz R107, an elegant 70s coupe that embodies the refinement and durability that perfectly aligns with Gere's lifestyle. If you believe that true lifestyle isn't about flashy excess but about refined choices, drop a comment and share the most iconic car you love. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this. He also once drove a sleek 2015 Jaguar XK, elegant yet unpretentious, with a wooden interior and a powerful V8 engine, but humble a reflection of himself. Notably, he also owned a 2004 Lotus Esprit, a rare, low, compact car, like a private, thrilling moment that doesn't need to be witnessed by anyone. All of his cars were real cars, not props for magazine shoots. And when it came time to part ways, he never hesitated. In 2023, Richard Gere quietly auctioned off his 1999 Jaguar XK8 convertible for $31,000 to support victims of the war in Ukraine. There was no promotional campaign, no hashtags, no media coverage. It was simply an action, but one that clearly showed where he chose to direct his wealth. The most valuable asset Richard Gere owns isn't on any map, nor can it be converted into dollars. It's the cultural legacy he has quietly built and protected over decades. As chairman of the board of Tibet House US, the GE Foundation, and the International Campaign for Tibet, Gere has steadfastly fought for religious freedom, education, healthcare, and the preservation of Tibetan culture amid the pressures of globalization and the intense political pressure from China. Because of this, he was permanently banned from entering China and blacklisted by Hollywood, unable to take roles in blockbuster films for being too political. Yet he never changed his stance. He didn't back down, and he never apologized. Beyond Tibet, Gere is also a patron of Survival International, an organization that protects indigenous communities at risk, and he founded an HIV/AIDS charity in India, where he built healthcare facilities for women and children affected by the epidemic. In Richard Gere's office, you won't find sparkling golden trophies or certificates cluttering the walls. Instead, his office is adorned with Tibetan Buddhist paintings, ancient statues, and handwritten scriptures, items that few pay attention to, items that have no clear monetary value. But to him, they are treasures. They don't increase his financial worth, but they elevate the value of his life. Richard Gere doesn't need wealth to impress. But every piece of land he buys, every house he builds, every bottle of wine he produces, every car he chooses, and every organization he quietly supports, all of it proves one thing. He doesn't reject wealth. He simply chooses to become wealthy in a way that Hollywood could never replicate. He sold his house, exchanged land, and changed his lifestyle. But the most profound transformation in Richard Gere's life didn't come from wealth, fame, or politics. It came from something much simpler: a woman, and the little children who call him Dad. At an age when many stars choose to retreat behind a wall of glory, Richard Gere can be found arranging flowers with his 4-year-old son in a garden in Madrid, a picture that makes people see him in a completely different light. His wife, Alejandra Silva, is a Spanish social activist and the daughter of Ignacio Silva, former vice president of Real Madrid. Born into an elite family, Alejandra grew up surrounded by politics, football, and the media. Yet she chose to step away from the spotlight, devoting herself to humanitarian work and seeking the meaning of life not through fame, but through giving. In 2018, she and Richard Gere held a simple wedding in New York, no flashbulbs, no fanfare. It was where two very different worlds came together, not to draw attention, but to find a place they could both call home. A year later, at the age of 70, Richard Gere welcomed his first son with Alejandra, little Alexander, born in 2019. The following year, they welcomed another son, whose name is kept private, like a piece of memory reserved just for the family. He may have become a father later in life, but it was never too late to love in his own way. Once known for being introverted and living independently, Richard Gere now spends most of his time at home, playing with his two young sons, taking them for walks, telling stories, and being present at every meal. There's no 24/7 nanny on standby, no clear distinction between dad's duties and mom's duties. In that home, every role is shared with love and presence. He is a part of their childhood memories, not because of wealth, but because of the gifts filled with love. He once said something simple: "A happy wife means a happy life." For his wife, he left the U.S. For her, he decided to sell the real estate he had been attached to for 35 years. For her, he learned Spanish, changed his living arrangements, adjusted to a new time zone, and, most importantly, redefined his own concept of success. In 2024, after liquidating all of his assets in the U.S., Richard Gere moved his family to Spain full-time, choosing a historic villa in Alcobendas, a suburb north of Madrid, as their new home. This is no longer a vacation spot or a second home, but a place to start over, a simple, everyday life like anyone else. In an interview with Vanity Fair Spain, he shared, "My wife gave me 6 years to live in my world. Now it's time for me to live in hers." But Richard Gere doesn't just live to enjoy life. Alongside Alejandra, he is involved in the Hogarth nonprofit project, which aims to eliminate homelessness in Spain within the next 5 years. They also work together to support Sierra Amar in Mexico, a program focused on sustainable coastal restoration, where Richard quietly invests, observes, and leaves a profound impact without speeches or fanfare. At the end of 2024, the whole family celebrated a warm Christmas with 35 relatives at their villa in Alcobendas. After Alejandra's grandmother passed away, it was Richard who encouraged his wife to keep the home fires burning, continuing the tradition of Sunday lunches where 3 generations gathered around the table. For him, success is no longer about million-dollar leading roles or the bright lights of the stage. Success now is the sound of children's laughter, a wife who understands him, mornings without alarms, only the sunshine and peace. What is most valuable is that he has 3 children, each born in a different chapter of his life. Homer, born in 2000, is the son of his ex-wife, Carrie Liel. He is a quiet young man who was raised with great care by Richard during and after their divorce. Despite the changes in the family, Homer has maintained a close relationship with his father, often visiting him and actively supporting his charitable endeavors. With Alexander and the youngest son, Richard has embraced fatherhood with maturity and calmness, no longer burdened by the pressures of fame or career. He doesn't need to be an ideal role model, just present enough, close enough, and loving enough. It's hard to imagine that the man who once made waves on screen portraying a high-end escort would choose a minimalist lifestyle, starting his day with meditation and taking care of the garden behind his house. However, for Richard Gere, life has always been a journey of rebirth. Since his early 20s, he has embraced the path of Zen meditation, studying under Zen master Kyozan Joshu Sasaki, then traveling to Nepal to meet Tibetan monks. Later, he formally became a Buddhist in the Gelugpa tradition, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama initiating him. But this faith did not cause him to retreat into a monastery. Instead, it granted him a quiet yet strong presence in the world. He once said, "Don't think of yourself as a passing thought. Eat the good food, walk under the sun, jump into the sea, be silly, be kind, be strange, for there's no time for anything else." That is not just an inspiring quote, but a lifestyle he has steadfastly chosen. From his eating habits, daily routines, to rejecting certain roles. For the past 20 years, Gere has steered clear of commercial films, saying no to formulaic scripts and resolutely refusing to align himself with the trend of casting middle-aged men as heartthrobs. Instead of chasing fame, he has chosen roles with more depth in films like Arbitrage, Norman, Time Out of Mind, and The Benefactor Works that didn't make a big splash at the box office, but resonated emotionally. He immerses himself in roles of quiet, solitary, reflective characters, revealing a part of his own inner world through them. In real life, Richard Gere moves at a slower pace than the rest of the world. He eats organic food, practices yoga, grows his own vegetables, pours his own wine, and never touches his phone when having a conversation with someone. He believes that silence is a quiet power in a noisy and chaotic world. This is why Bedford Post Inn, his beloved project in New York, is not a place for showing off or attracting crowds. With only 8 guest rooms, no bar, no electronic music, and no VIP sections, it offers only yoga, handcrafted wine, and a slow enough pace of life for people to hear the beat of their own hearts. From faraway Italy, he specially imports a type of Brunello di Montalcino under the Bedford Post label. This rich wine is served at the charity events he organizes. It is not sold on the market, nor mass-branded. It's meant to be shared, to be opened on a quiet afternoon with an old friend. Richard does not own a yacht nor a private jet, nor has he started a tech company or launched a fashion brand like many of his contemporaries. What he keeps is a clear mind, a warm heart, and decisions that require no justification. In a world where people confuse fame with presence, Richard Gere chooses to disappear in order to truly be himself. He once said, "Don't think of yourself as a forgotten thought." And he lives just as that without seeking to impress, but truly being present in each meaningful moment. Now, he no longer craves leading roles or dreams of an Oscar, but he possesses a kind of wealth that no paycheck can define. A peaceful home with his wife and children, a historic estate in Madrid, the villas he built and then left behind, wine bearing his name, a meditation inn with no bar, and a life that's full yet always measured. His estimated net worth is over $120 million. But perhaps the most precious thing he holds is the right to live as a truly authentic human being. It's not about retreating from the world, but returning to oneself. And perhaps, after all the lights have faded, Richard Gere is whispering a simple truth to us. When you no longer wish to be seen, that is when you are truly seen. What do you think about Richard Gere's choice? Would you be willing to trade the spotlight for peace of mind? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel so you don't miss out on more profound stories like this. If yes, comment 1. If no, comment 0. Enjoy the video and don't forget to leave a subscription to support the channel. You are the motivation for us to continue telling heart-touching stories like this.